I'm Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. Today on the couch, I'm so excited to welcome author Leah Konen to talk about her new book, Keep Your Friends Close. Now, you might know Leah Konen as she's the author of the mystery, thriller and suspense books You Should Have Told Me, The Perfect Escape, and All the Broken People. Plus, she's also written books for young adult readers too. But in Keep Your Friends Close, we meet Mary, a mother who recently separated from her super controlling husband. She is desperate for a friend, and she's thrilled to meet Willa, who becomes an incredibly bright spot in her life. As they get close, Mary shares a deep, dark secret about her husband with Willa, and the next morning, Willa disappears. Mary is devastated, but she's moving on with her life. She moves from Brooklyn to upstate New York with her son. Her divorce is almost finalized. And one day, she sees someone who looks exactly like Willa, but she says her name is Annie. And when Mary's husband, who she's divorcing, turns up dead, and Mary becomes the prime suspect, she has no choice but to turn to her only friend in town. And as coincidences and evidence pile up, Mary starts to wonder whether Willa had something to do with her husband's death. And she must uncover the truth before she loses everything. So in this episode, Leah and I talk about her new book. We also circle back to her previous books. We get great book recommendations and lots more. But before we get into the episode, pretty please subscribe to the podcast and leave me a 5-star rating if you haven't already. Write me a review if you love the show, and share this episode or any of your favorite episodes with your bookish friends. It would mean a lot to me if you did. So thanks in advance. And now onto the episode with author Leah Konen. Hi readers, welcome again to the Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and here on the couch with me to talk about her novel, Keep Your Friends Close, is author Leah Konen. Hi Leah, welcome to the Reader's Couch.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yay! I'm so excited to have you here. I've been a fan of your books for some time now, and this one, Keep Your Friends Close, I'm really excited about it. But now that it's available, I mean, you're the author. How are you feeling? How excited are you?
I'm very excited. I think this is one of my favorite books I have ever written, if not my favorite. And it's about two mom friends who kind of meet on a playground, but one of them is definitely not who she says she is, kind of lightly inspired by strangers on a train. And so I think personally, as a mom myself, who is frequently meeting other toddler moms on playgrounds, it's very close to home. And it was just so much fun to kind of explore that world.
I think maybe that's why I gravitated to it too, because you do have your mom friends, right? And at different stages, your children are going to meet other children. You're going to meet their moms. Sometimes it's at playgrounds, schools, activities. So I really think this one will resonate with a lot of folks out there. But let's get into it, shall we? Willa is one of the women in the book, and also is Mary. But I want us to start with Mary first, because, she's the one who's, in my opinion, really going through it. So tell us about Mary, what's going on in her life. She's a mom to a 2-year-old. Just tell us all about it.
So Mary is someone, she's coming from a smaller town in upstate New York, but she's been living in the city in Brooklyn for kind of most of her adult life. And she married into this extremely wealthy family, and she's living kind of this dream life, right? In this brownstone that overlooks the park in Brooklyn, something that most of us can't even dream of. She's got a 2-year-old, but she is actually trying to leave her husband for many reasons, but she feels that he's kind of become controlling, and especially in regards to her child, they're just not lining up on how they want to raise him at all. And as she's trying to leave, himself and his family are kind of using the child as a way to control her and kind of threaten to take custody if she actually leaves him. So she's in this extremely tight spot where she feels like her whole kind of safety net for most of her adult life has been this man and his family. And now she's, she hasn't really worked in years. She's kind of thrown herself into motherhood, but now she doesn't have the resources really to kind of start a new life for herself. So she feels that she's trapped in this really tight spot. And that's kind of where her mindset is when she meets Willa.
Yeah, absolutely. She's in an incredibly vulnerable state. And yes, that's exactly when Willa comes along. Willa becomes that friend, that person she's just really excited to connect with. Willa is kind of like a huge bright spot, just really good to have around. She's getting her to go out. She's arranging play dates with their children, and it fills that gap of not having your family, not having your friends, and seeing that your in-laws are, not really your best friends right now, and you're a bit estranged. We really see Mary begin to rely heavily on Willa. So tell us about Willa, who Willa is, although to be fair, I think that's part of the story. It's figuring out who Willa is, but tell us about Willa when she connects with Mary for that first time and before she ghosts Mary, because inevitably Willa ghosts her.
Yes. So I think what Mary really connects with is Willa is just, she feels like, you said a bright spot. I think kind of like a breath of fresh air in this world. Willa she just seems from the get-go, she seems very different than the other mothers that Mary is meeting and feels like she's not able to kind of connect with. Willa she doesn't kind of play the game and follow the rules like the other people seem to. The first time they meet, she's feeding her kid, potato chips, and whereas everyone else has these perfectly packed, carrots and cucumber lunches, and Willa's just I don't have time for that. And, the salt's not going to kill them. They'll be fine. And Mary just kind of finds it so just refreshing because Mary feels herself like she's in this, like I said, this tight spot, and she's not able to kind of be the mother to Alex that maybe she wishes she could. And so to have someone here who's kind of just very laid back about it, but also seems like quite a good mother, has a great connection with this child, and seems actually quite happy with her role. That is just kind of very intoxicating to her. And I think in addition to just how they are with the kids, you're right that Willa is like, let's go out, let's get drinks. The first time she says she has extra tickets to this opera at the Met. And so Willa's also kind of opening up this world to Mary again that she was part of, but has been closed off since she left George. So she's really attracted kind of to Willa's energy and youth, and just kind of the spirit that she's bringing to motherhood. And they form a very, very close and very quick friendship. And then kind of a couple months in, Mary kind of opens up and tells her a little bit more about what's going on with George, including something that she hasn't really shared with anybody else. And then Willa's just out. She disappears. She does not see her in the playground. She doesn't see her, around the neighborhood. They don't live that far from each other. And she's just not seeing her. And she completely stops answering her texts. So I think there's kind of there's a what in the world is happening element to it, but there's also a heartbreak. I think a friend doing that to you in some ways can even be harder to handle than, a romantic partner doing it.
Absolutely. I do think we lean on our friends a lot, and we see Mary go through that. Now, this is a thriller, right? This is a thriller. I really want to bring that to the front and center. And Willa disappears. We see Mary move upstate, and she sees someone who looks like Willa. But this woman is saying, oh no, I'm not Willa. She gives her a new name. She says her name is Annie. There are lots of coincidences, of course. So Mary is really questioning what is going on. But tell us a bit about this new person, Annie, obviously without going into spoilers.
So, I think what's interesting here, she looks, Mary immediately sees her and it's that's Willa. But a lot of things are just off. Willa was living this kind of fabulous life in Brooklyn, and she only wore like designer clothes and, just like kind of perfectly coiffed at all times. And then Annie, it's, her hair is darker. It's this kind of like, Willa was this like beautiful platinum blonde, and her hair is this like kind of mousy brown. And she wears things that, things that all of us wear, like, a sundress from Target or whatever. But you know, to what Mary knows of Willa is like, she never would have worn that. But I think the biggest thing that is just like a kind of that Twilight Zone moment of what is going on is that she sees her in town, and this woman has a young girl with her who is not the child that, Mary got to know in Brooklyn. And so that's just like this, that really throws her. And she's kind of trying to figure out, like, Mary's trying to figure out, am I just imagining things? Am I just seeing coincidences here? Or is this really my friend? And if it is, what does that mean? Because then it goes from just we had a weird friend breakup, she ghosted me, to, oh, this person who I let into my life, I had her around my kid, like all that. Is she really not who she says she is at all?
Exactly. And that's what we will be asking ourselves as we're reading and as we're turning the pages. So I will leave it there for readers to figure out. But I'm curious about you, Leah. Where did this idea come from to write this story? Mary, Willa, Annie, putting motherhood at the center. What was your inspiration for this novel?
So I had a daughter she's just turned 4, and we did her, we were in Brooklyn, and then we were in upstate New York for most of like the biggest part of the pandemic. And so for like the first 18 months of my daughter's life, like she just was with us. Like we just, we weren't doing playgrounds, we weren't doing any of that. There was no groups, there was no mommy and me classes, none of that. And so then we came back to Brooklyn when she was about a year and a half. And so I felt like I was thrown into this world. The playground where Willa and Mary meet is the playground I take, based on the playground that I like to go to. And so I thought there was something so interesting. That, like, side note, none of the friends I've made in Brooklyn are con artists, as far as I know. But there was something so interesting about the idea of you're making these friends, and there's this like nervousness and almost earnestness to it, kind of like you said, like kind of like teenagers, or like when you show up in college with your like extra long twin bedspread and your lamp, and you're like, hi, let's be friends. And so I don't know, I found that experience of female friendship to be just really fascinating and something I hadn't really played with. And I think there's also like, there's a lot of comparison, and there can be shame in mothering and that community. And so I just loved the idea that maybe their friendship didn't look right off the bat, didn't look exactly like maybe some of the other friendships that Mary had experienced or had kind of tried to create. And so, yeah, I mean, it came from just wanting to explore this like funny toddler parenting scene, but then also, on my own part, writing thrillers and this great love of like Patricia Highsmith and Hitchcock. And so, what if I could do kind of a Strangers on a Train-esque type of story, but put it with, playground moms instead of 2 men on a train.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense. Absolutely. So, getting into your writing life a bit, because you've written quite a few thrillers. I mean, You Should Have Told Me, The Perfect Escape, All the Broken People. First off, I'd love for you to share a little about All the Broken People, because that's one of my favorites of yours. And also tell us a bit about You Should Have Told Me.
Yes. So All the Broken People was my first thriller, and it was really fun. To write. I think I had never played with those kind of elements before, so I did a lot of learning. But All the Broken People, we have a woman, Lucy, she's leaving Brooklyn to get away from an abusive boyfriend, and she finds herself in upstate New York, and she meets this like fascinating couple, John and Vera, who she kind of falls in love with in a weird way, just like not really necessarily romantically, but she just feels so drawn to them. And then they actually ask her to help them out with something. They are going to fake the husband's death for reasons, and they just need her to kind of go on this hike with them, and say one thing to the police, and then that's going to solve everyone's problems. And as you can imagine, it does not go as planned, and kind of things just unfold from there. So yeah, so that's all the broken people.
Yes, and then you also had The Perfect Escape shortly after. I think a lot of people probably picked up on Konen as that, edge of your seat thriller writer with this one.
Yes, so that one was fun. There's a theme here that I tend to write about, women in the city who are kind of getting away into the country and things go wrong. So Perfect Escape was kind of a girls' weekend gone awry, and it's friends from Brooklyn who go on this weekend, and on the way their car breaks down and they actually wind up in a place they weren't supposed to be. But there's a lot of coincidences and things that it almost feels like they were brought there. And then, of course, when one of the friends goes missing, they have to really kind of look into what caused them to wind up in this town and what is going on there.
Yes, and then I think this is where you started exploring motherhood, was You Should Have Told Me, because in that book, I remember we had a character who was also struggling with motherhood, who had some secrets going on. So tell us about You Should Have Told Me.
Yeah, so You Should Have Told Me, very close to my heart. I wrote it I started it when my firstborn daughter was 6 months old, I think. So it's really about a woman who is kind of really struggling with new motherhood. She's definitely experiencing postpartum depression. And then her partner says, you don't seem like yourself. Let me kind of take over the baby tonight. Let me do all the feedings so you can kind of get some sleep. And she wakes up in the middle of the night to her baby crying, and her partner has completely disappeared. And so that was to me, just like as a new mom, just feeling so kind of spread thin. To me, there was nothing more terrifying than the idea that the one person who's supposed to be there to help you just like disappearing, and why that could happen.
Yes, absolutely. So I can tell you really focus on, women, female friendship, and motherhood in your thrillers. What would you say are other differences that I'm missing, but also how are they different?
Well, I think there's so many themes that you're going to see across them, but I think the stories and what the women are looking for are really, really different. I think All the Broken People, Lucy was really like looking for family and looking to kind of find her place in the world. And then, I think You Should Have Told Me was more of a story of a woman basically coming to terms with being a mother and all the good and bad that brings, and just kind of that radical shift in identity that happens. And then Keep Your Friends Close. I think this one's just like fun. It's just, it is about the Brooklyn toddler parenting scene. It is in upstate New York. It's got all that. It's about female friendship, but I think, there's like a jewelry heist element. There's a lot of commentary on the mental load and how that always falls to women. I think Keep Your Friends Close is where I just kind of like threw all the rules out and we're like, let me just put all these themes that I just love to explore into this book.
Oh, I love hearing that. That's awesome. That's so cool. So you've also written young adult books as well. One of my favorites of yours is Love and Other Train Wrecks. Tell us about that one. And also tell us, what's the difference with writing YA and now writing for adult and writing thrillers too?
Yeah, so Love and Other Train Wrecks, I get a lot of inspiration from old movies. So a great movie from, I want to say 30s or 40s, was It Happened One Night, where these two people their bus breaks down and they find themselves kind of thrown into this destination, this journey together to get to their destination. And I thought, and then you also have Planes, Trains, and Automobiles from the 80s, which is a super fun movie. And so I thought, what if we like leaned into that kind of story, but did it with two teens? So we have Noah and Amy, who are both headed on the Amtrak going to upstate New York, and the train breaks down in the middle of a snowstorm, and they are strangers, but they're seatmates. And they, for reasons, they decide that they're going to leave the train together because they think they can walk to the closest bus station and kind of go on their way. Of course, it doesn't quite work out. And they run into a series of, weather issues and hijinks, and which ends up bringing them kind of closer. So it's kind of like it's definitely got romantic elements, and it's a very short timeline. It's all over the course of just one day. So I loved that book, and I loved writing it, and it thrills me that readers are still connecting with it.
Oh, absolutely. I actually think the reason I gravitated to it too is that it was set over the course of a day. I love reading those books every so often that, just packs everything in. It is a whirlwind, but it was just, oh, so good. It was really fun and cute. So even though you have an extensive catalogue of work, readers, we are greedy. I know for sure. I'm always excited for the next book. So are you working on any other projects right now? Anything you can tell us?
Yes, super exciting. I actually just turned it in to my editor, and it is another thriller, and it is set in a snowstorm. So I think that is really fun. We're calling it The Last Room on the Left, and it is kind of inspired by The Shining, actually, but with women. And basically, this writer accepts this winter caretaker position in a revitalized roadside motel. And she just thinks this is going to be great. She goes up, she's intent on finishing her novel. She has, of course, some of her own demons that she's battling, and she just needs to get this book done. And when she gets up there, everything is wrong. And she very quickly finds a body in the snow. And so, of course, she has to figure out what's going on, and what happened to the woman who was there before her.
Ooh, how exciting. I love that. I love the setting too. Winter setting, caretaker position, and then dead body. Yes, sign me up.
Yeah,
Really excited.
everything, right?
Yes. Very exciting. Awesome. So we have a book to look forward to. But looking back, Leah, if you could tell your younger writing self anything, I mean, you have 5 young adult novels, 4 published adult thrillers. You have number 5 on the way. If you could tell your younger self anything, what would you tell her?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think just at the end of the day, it's got to be about the writing, the practice of it, and the finding joy in the work of actually putting the words down on the page, because publishing is a career with a lot of ups and downs, and it can be tough to keep putting books out in the world. And so I think you have to really find the joy in the actual kind of creativity of it and the storytelling. And then once it's done, kind of just send it out, and readers will do with it what they will.
Yep, that sounds pretty solid indeed. But I really want to get into your reading life. So share with me the last book or books that you finished reading that you'd now recommend.
So recently I have been obsessed with I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Mackay. That was like a fascinating take on kind of thriller mixed with like a true crime element. And then I also love The Change by Kirsten Miller, which is about the women who are going through menopause and as such develop kind of special powers, which I think is just the perfect, most brilliant idea. And then I also just finished All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby, and that was fantastic.
Yes, all amazing books. What would you say was your childhood favorite that you can remember?
Oh, so I loved this one book called The Enchanted Castle. That just like kind of totally changed my world kind of book, because it was just, I don't know, it felt so magical. And then, of course, I'm a child, the 90s, the 80s and 90s. So I was living on Babysitter's Club. So I read like almost all of them.
Awesome. And what books are you looking forward to reading in the year ahead?
So this year is so good for thrillers. It's crazy. There's a new ton of French, which it's like you have to,
Yeah.
every year that there's a new ton of French, that is a good year. But I'm super also into, can't wait to read One of the Good Guys by Araminta Hall because it's Gillian Flynn's imprint. And I'm like so excited to just like kind of see the types of books that she's just throwing all her talent behind. And then I'm also super excited about a book called Missing White Woman by Kelly Garrett.
Ooh, interesting. I think it's a good year for thrillers too. I've been scanning around and I'm really, really excited. So on the show, we have two kinds of listeners. Sometimes we have readers who are reading books, but sometimes they fall into a slump. And sometimes we have readers who are trying to get back into the habit. So they've fell out of it. They're struggling to find time to read. What has worked for you? What advice would you share for one, the person in a reading slump, but also two, the person struggling to get back into reading and finding the time?
I think my suggestion for both of them is kind of the same. I think trying to switch up formats. I think like audiobooks, for example, is such a great way to get back in because it's very easy to kind of work into your life while you're doing chores or commuting. Or I read a lot of audiobooks when I'm going on runs. So I think just trying something else like that is a lot of times, maybe we don't have the energy to sit down and open a book and focus, but having someone read the story to us, is definitely something that's possible. And I still consider that reading. I don't think there should be any kind of elitism or ableism about, reading a book on paper or a Kindle or whatever is different than an audiobook. So I think that's great. And then I think just with a slump, it's just, I think you have to read what connects with you, not what someone tells you is the book that you're supposed to read or is the important book to read this year. And, don't be afraid if something's not connecting with you, don't be afraid to put it down and move on. That's just what happens sometimes. So I think just trying to find whatever makes you happy reading would be my advice because I think reading is such a joy.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Try a new format, give yourself time and put down the books that aren't working for you. 100%. So on the show, we also love indie booksellers. So share with our listeners some of your favorite local indies.
So yes, I have two, and I'm very happy to be doing events with both of them this year or for this book launch. So definitely head over to my website, leahkonen.com, or my newsletter and to get notified of all the events. But one of my favorites in Brooklyn is Greenlight Books, which is just this fabulous local store in downtown Brooklyn. And they have just a slate of so many wonderful events with some of my favorite authors and friends, and they're just a lovely, lovely store. And then up in Woodstock, New York, we have the Golden Notebook, which is it's just the perfect kind of community bookstore where you go in, all the booksellers. They're just so, lovely and excited to be kind of doing really creative events and just welcoming people into the store.
Yes, that's what we love about all indies for sure. They always have good books, good events and just great book people. So yeah, absolutely amazing. All right, so getting back to keep your friends close and kind of just wrapping things together. Again, I know you've done your job, you've written the book, you've given it to us, but what are some of the thoughts or reactions or feelings you're hoping readers might feel after they've turned the last page?
Well, I hope that there's some surprise there. There's several reveals and, little twists and turns. So maybe I definitely don't expect astute readers to not catch any of them, but I hope that they are finding places that they can be surprised. And I really hope that they feel connection and for these women and feel like they can see parts of themselves in them. Even, Willa especially is very kind of does her own thing and definitely living a life that's a bit morally ambiguous. I still hope that people can kind of find ways to like root for these women.
Yes, absolutely. Leah, thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you so much for reading.
Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.